If you signed up for a Twisted Death game for a chance to win billions, do you think you'd survive? Do you think you'd be the one out of 456 desperate broke people to come out on top in the twisted Korean version of Mr. Beast's challenge videos? You do? Well, you're wrong, and I'm about to tell you why. But before we go any further, subscribe to the channel and do it now, because by the end, you'll either end up like him, her, all of them, or maybe even him. All of these deeply indebted people are about to play the red light, green light children's game from hell. The game itself is simple. We're only allowed to move when the doll across the arena says green light, and we have to freeze when it says red light. Our fellow contestants drop like flies, as people who don't freeze get gunned down by sniper fire. This leads us to reason number one why you wouldn't survive. You panicked and tried to pull out. Your pullout game was already pretty mediocre to begin with. Add that to the pressure of hundreds of other contestants screaming for their lives and the sound of bullets ripping through their flesh. And the odds are, you're going to be a sheep and try to get away. When the dust finally settles, nearly half the group is dead and you've accumulated enough trauma to need therapy for years. Like Jihan here, you're trembling uncontrollably and your life is flashing before your eyes. However, you don't have his exceedingly thick plot armor to protect you from getting blasted full of lead. But somehow you've made it to the next round, and understandably, a lot of people are getting cold feet. They take it to a vote, and just over half of the group decides that they'd rather keep their lives than get brutally murdered. The Game Masters drop the surviving contestants back into their miserable lives, and in just days, 90% of them come back for round 2. This leads us to reason number 2 why you wouldn't survive. You came back for seconds. After wallowing in the misery of your broke life and faced with impending doom from collectors, you decided it was time for round 2 with evil Mr. Beast's challenge game. They let you walk away with just minor PTSD, which should have given you some perspective. People flat out died, and you're already lucky enough to not count yourself as part of the kill count. Instead, just like my ex, you come crawling back with peak desperation, and now we're going into round 2. The second game is cutting out a shape of your choice using Dalgon candy. We have to carve this shape from toffee, depending on which shape we chose. If you break the shape while cutting it, you'll receive the sweet release of death from one of the pink soldiers. This leads us to reason number 3 why you wouldn't survive. You crack easily under pressure. Now, if you're staring down the barrel of a gun with nothing but 5 minutes and a needle to carefully cut out a shape from a highly unpredictable material, it's safe to say that you might be a little nervous. Being nervous will cause you to have shaky hands and you won't be able to think properly. Your best shot would be copying Jihan's idea of vigorously licking the candy into breaking on its own. It's time for lunch and this gang member and his posse decide to go for seconds. They get called out for it and this man protests and tries to take his water. Enraged, the bully beats him to death, adding another 100,000 won to the prize pool. That night, the third game commences and it's a battle royale while in the pitch black dark. Now, you may be an expert in PUBG or Warzone, but when people are brutally murdering each other with their bare hands, your button pressing skills are next to useless. This brings us to the reason number 4 why you wouldn't survive. You forgot to stretch. Being the naive heavy sleeper that you are, you were probably hoping that hiding under the covers would protect you from the savagery of your fellow contestants. Unfortunately, that small comfort was nothing but a lie, and you would have been added to the kill count. Finally, the alarms blare and the people left get to form teams of 10 for the next mystery death challenge. This next game is a good old-fashioned tug of war. We've been unlucky enough to be stuck with 3 90-pound women and an elderly man. Do you think your team would survive? Do you think leaning backwards, tiring the opposing team out, and then going 3 steps forward would make the other team stumble? Well, this guy on YouTube actually tried this, and proved that it doesn't work. So without an extra 500 pounds of heavy plot armor, we're gonna go splat on the floor. All of this adds up to reason number 5 why you wouldn't survive. You skipped arm day. For this next game, you're going to have to pair up with another player. And since the last game had you working together, you're going to expect the same and pick someone who's smart, strong, and ruthless. If you did that, well, you're going to have a tough time with this round. That's reason number 6 why you wouldn't survive. You picked a little too well. Here, we each get 10 marbles and 30 minutes to take all 10 marbles from our partner. There's no violence allowed, and the loser will get popped in the head by their pink man. Your only hope of guaranteeing victory is to scam your partner and manipulate them into just giving you their marbles. You could say that you're setting up a game, and you'll make it so that you'll both win by tying. Then, you hand over your 20 marbles over to the pink guy and get an easy win into the next round. And that goes into reason number 7 why you wouldn't survive. You're too nice. As the old saying goes, nice guys finish last. And if you have a heart of gold, I'm sorry to say that you're guaranteed to end up in the ground. If you're like Ali here and are just as gullible as a sack of rocks, then someone more ruthless, like Mr. High-Powered Businessman here, is definitely going to take advantage of you. Just like Thanos envisioned, 50% of the players get wiped out, except for the crazy lady who didn't get a partner. Lucky her. We are on Game 5, and the group is presented with 16 numbers, which correspond to the order in which they're playing. Numbers are quickly filled up until there's just 1 and 16 left. If you're like Jihan here, then you've correctly deduced that there's a time limit here, and you're about to pick first. As you'll see later, this will almost guarantee your death. However, he's incredibly lucky that this wimp here decides to stand up for the last time in his life and takes number 1. We have to cross this death trap of a bridge, with one tile being just glass and another tile being tempered glass, which can hold up 2 people. The odds of this first guy winning this is like the odds of flipping a coin 18 times and getting heads every single time. It's just not going to happen. Depending on which number you picked and how good your memory is, you'll have a slightly higher chance of survival if you pick the higher number. He makes it 2 tiles and then falls to his death. One by one, contestants drop like flies, paving the way for higher numbers to make it further and further onto the bridge, until the gangster guy insists that he won't go, and the crazy lady who we banged in the bathroom earlier volunteers to go next. This gives us reason number 9 why you wouldn't survive. You stuck it in crazy. Like this ex-gang member Alpha Chad Pac-Mill Eater, you've decided to mix business with pleasure. Little do you know, the golden rule in every death game is to never stick it in crazy. Just look how it ended up for him. We're down to 4 contestants, and the lead guy is an expert glassmaker. By looking at how the light hits the glass, he's able to get them to the final panel. But when the game makers realize this, they shut off the lights and they have to guess off the sound of a marble. The impatient businessman yeets him into the next panel, which shatters, and the final 3 make it to the ending, just in time for all of the glass to explode, injuring everybody. Now, it's nearly impossible that you've made it this far. You probably were forced to jump to your death by either guessing incorrectly or getting backstabbed by your fellow contestants. Now we're down to our final 3. They all get to have a feast for a final meal, and when they're finished, they get left with their steak knives. The girl here was severely injured from the exploding glass and is minutes away from bleeding out. Jihan tries to get help for her, but turns around to see that his childhood best friend has finished her off the second he had the opportunity. Leads us to reason number 10 why you wouldn't survive. You're not a complete sociopath. You somehow made it to the final 3, and while you're doing brutal things, you draw the line at murder, especially if it's the emotional surrogate for your daughter. Without one of 3 contestants dying, there won't be any progression. Jihan almost succeeds in dropping out with the girl, but his best friend makes the choice for him, and they're left as the last 2 contestants in the final game. This is it. Against all odds, you've somehow sauntered your way into the last game, and you're so close to a life-changing amount of money, courtesy of evil Korean Mr. Beast. Jihan here wins the coin flip and decides to play offense, and take revenge on his best friend for finishing off that girl. The final game is Squid Game. As the attacker, Jihan has put himself at a disadvantage in the name of vengeance. He has to make it past his friend and put his foot on the circle at the other end of the field. All the defender has to do is push him out of bounds to win. The 2 men fight, and it's brutal. Armed with their steak knives, the traditional rules of this game are completely thrown out of the window as they approach to fight to the death. In the heavy rain, Jihan goes for the stab but gets disarmed by Sang-woo. There's eye gouging, headbutting, choking, and punching as the two men completely lose sight of the game and just go for each other's throats. Jihan gets stabbed in the thigh, and just as he's about to end it, Jihan blocks it with his hand and takes a nice big bite out of Sang-woo's foot. Jihan beats him down and rips away the knife, stabbing it right next to Sang-woo and offering him the chance for them to walk away together. And if you think you'd survive a brain-heavy fight against a desperate SNU graduate like Sang-woo here, then you'd better hope that those karate classes you took in 3rd grade are going to pay off. And that's reason number 11 why you wouldn't survive. You're no John Wick. Like many of us, you've seen John Wick easily take down 50 guys with nothing but a pencil and a love of dogs. Unfortunately for you, doing that is a lot harder than watching someone do it. When you're in the rain with heavy wet clothes, you're emotionally compromised so you're not thinking straight, and you forgot your plot armor at home, well, you're pretty much screwed. Refusing to go back to his old life, Sang-woo again makes the hard decision and offs himself, leaving Jihan to be the winner of Squid Game. But what are your thoughts? Would you win Squid Game? Are you just built different? Let me know with a comment down below. Thank you for watching this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.